Hi, I'm Elizabeth at Literary Princess. If you are new here, welcome. I'm a 6-year PhD candidate in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists. And as you might expect, I love to read. Today, I thought that it would be fun to react to some 1-star reviews of my favorite books of 2024. So I've seen people do this for various things, like just their favorite books overall or whatever. And I was like, oh, it's the end of the year. I could do it with some of my 5-star reads for 2024. So these are not like necessarily my top 10 books. That list is coming out way later. There's not even 10 here. These are just ones that I looked through the reviews and they were kind of funny, or I had something to say about the reviews. But they are all books that I gave 5 stars to this year. So I will not be naming names to protect the guilty. I kid. Like if you don't like a book that I like I get that. My favorite book is Wuthering Heights. I deal with this all the time. I enjoy reading 1-star reviews of Wuthering Heights just because they're usually really funny. Because people are just like, what on earth? So yeah, I don't care if somebody doesn't like a book that I love. And same thing vice versa. If somebody loves a book that I hate, I might be like, why? But I don't really care. But it is kind of fun to read some of these reviews and be like, did we read the same book at all? Or why did you even pick this up? So I've got 5 books. Let's jump in. So first up, we have The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison. This book blew me away with how good it was. Just, ugh. So our first 1-star review comes from 2021. DNF'd at 250 pages. A little less than halfway. This was so bad. No plot, no relatable characters, and no world building. Ma'am, did we read the same book? Because the world building is what I loved about this. No world... Okay. But instead, with we I mean I, get annoying names that are impossible to pronounce or to remember, so every fantasy series ever. And a majestic plural that made me want to throw the book against a wall. We did not like the majestic plural, and we are pretty sure it is not only due to the German translation, but the fact that the word serenity is used 3 fucking times on each page. Sorry, I guess there's going to be swearing in this video. Would probably have been slightly less annoying in English because the word, I do not speak German, but Durchlacht is just disgusting and I never want to read it again now that I have read it at least 500 times. Can somebody please explain why this novel has so many good reviews? Now, they say that it's not because of the German translation, but I kind of wonder because there is a lot of language stuff going on in this book. There's different endings for names depending on the gender of a person or their social status. They all use the the royal we if they are talking in a formal setting. They use thou if they're speaking to someone in a very informal, casual, close relationship, but they use you otherwise. So I do wonder if maybe that translates weird? I don't know. I mean, I know that a lot of other languages do have that, though, like a formal you. So I have no idea if German does or not. I don't speak German, as you could probably tell from my pronunciation of that word. But I will say that the plural we was hard to get used to. Like, I was like, wait, what? Why? It did take a minute, and then the sudden switch to thou for really familiar relationships, it did take a bit to get used to. but I didn't mind it. And honestly, I found it to be all part of that world building that this person says isn't there. So, all right, another one from 2015. Unreadable Glop. Glop. Goblins and elves, very thinly disguised. Disguised? I don't think they were disguised. They were pretty clearly goblins and elves. It says it. They Goblin. They weren't disguised. Okay. Clueless narrator as a way to world build. Thou popping up randomly, and lots of unpronounceable names. So every other fantasy book series ever. Why is this a complaint? They have a quote, but I don't feel the need to read it. Largely because the names are hard to pronounce. I'll give them that, they are. But that's like just a kind of a typical thing of fantasy at this point. And the world that's being built is basically a bureaucracy. If your idea of a good time is getting ISO 9001 certification, then this is your book. I don't know what that means, the ISO thing, but there is like a lot of like process of the government in this. So yeah, if that's not your thing, this isn't for you. Okay, that said, the Goblin Emperor was shortlisted for both the Nebula and Hugo Awards. Maybe I'm just an old crank. You said it, not me. And then, nevertheless, ... I assuming meaning, nevertheless, I'm giving it 1 star. I mean, it did win both the Nebula and Hugo Awards, so. Just saying. I guess Maya is rather a clueless narrator, but that's because he has been exiled, basically. And yeah, I guess it does work to world build, but I don't really see that as such a bad thing. I guess I don't really mind a narrator that is just as confused as I am about what's going on. So, and the thou popping up randomly, you figure it out after a while that it's for very close relationships, or if you're speaking down to somebody, that you're like really wanting to make it known that they're a lower status than you. But okay. All right, one from 2022. I really try to be a patient reader, and I'm willing to give the author time to establish their characters and setting. However, after 250 pages, about 50% into the book, that's where that other person stopped too, I reluctantly decided to cast this one aside. It just was not working for me. And while there is some serious world building going on here, thank you. I found the main character, through whose perspective the entire story is told, to be tedious and unsympathetic. Oh, I like Maya. I find him very sympathetic. Who the hell wants to get thrown into that role at the age of 18? Nobody. Perhaps I am just not a fan of court intrigue as a central plot device. Yeah, that would ruin you having a good time with this book. It just seemed like there was one court ritual or conference after another in which Maya was forced to meet with yet another of his annoying subjects. It put me in mind of those days back in the corporate world where I was required to attend endless meetings from morning till night. Yeah, kind of. I don't miss those days at all. Onwards and cheers. That was a very nice review. And yeah, if that's not your thing, that's not your thing. And I can totally get that. Apparently it's my thing. 2015, I hated this book. Boring. Every time I turned the page, I had that dreaded feeling it was never going to get good, and that lasted right up until it ended. Then I got angry that so many of you gave this a good review and convinced me that it was worth my time. I haven't hated a book this much in a long time. Okay. Don't blame the people that gave it a good review. Alright, so I think that's enough for the Goblin Emperor. We will move on to the next book. And that next book is Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau. I read this for Victober and loved it. This is a very early Victorian novel from 1839. And it's domestic realism, as a lot of things were in that time period. So there's only 4 one-star reviews on Goodreads of this. Did I say I was reading these off Goodreads? I figured you just knew, but one from 2021, boring beyond belief, and that's it. One from 2015, I've never read a less entertaining book. I wasted so many hours of my life with this. And if people wonder why I bothered with it, I had to read it for a class. It's fine if you don't agree. Many people in my class didn't. Well, I'm glad other people in the class liked it. But I personally consider this one of the most boring books I've ever held in my hands. Girl, I don't think you read Moby Dick then. Just saying. I mean, it's definitely slow. It's a Victorian novel. Most of them are slow. So, but no, I mean, I get it. I do get it. And especially if you had to read it for a class and you didn't choose to pick it up. All right, one from 2012. In the history of the Victorian novel, this is an important book, and Martineau is an important person in Victorian lit. But for contemporary readers, this is a hard read. And by hard, I mean boring. Really boring. It just doesn't work as a novel. But please do not tell my beloved Victorian lit professor. Smiley face. So we're sensing a theme here of the boring. It's slow. I think there's quite a few exciting scenes in here, but it's Victorian domestic realism. It's not a ton happening all the time. It is very character focused. And the last one that we have is a very long one from 2019, but I think since these were so short, we can read the whole thing. Sweet mother of pearl, this was dull. Overblown, plotting, plotless verbosity at its worst. And I say that as a lover of wordy Victoriana like Collins, Braddon, Le Fanu, Ouida et al. That's interesting though, because those are all sensation authors, or at least working in very popular genres. Ouida did some sensation, did some society, did some adventure. She was kind of all over the place. I know Le Fanu liked gothic and supernatural. Collins and Braddon are of course sensation. So that is all very fast-paced and plot-driven, whereas this is a character-driven book. This is high realism, if you will. It would go into the category of a high culture novel instead of a popular novel, which is a distinction that I'm working with a lot in my dissertation. So that might be why this person didn't like it. Because it's just, with Victorians, you need to not just think about the length, because most of them are long. That's just how they were. But you really need to consider the genre. Genre became very important in the Victorian era, more so than it was in the previous time periods. I made it through maybe 6 chapters before throwing in the towel. Oh, you didn't even give it a chance. Come on. 6 chapters? Yeah, 6 chapters is 52 pages in my edition anyway, and by my, I mean my university library's edition. Yeah, that's like not even fair when the book is, what is this, 500? Yeah, 519 pages. I don't even think you really get to rate it at that point. I don't know. I don't rate books if I finish them, or if I DNF them that soon into it. Actually, I usually don't rate books if I DNF them at all. I can think of one that I did. That's an interesting distinction. Let me know, do you rate books that you don't finish, Or do you have like a certain amount that you can get through and then you're like, okay, I'm not gonna finish it, but I'll still rate it. Like, I think with those Goblin Emperor ones where they finished it, where they were like, no, halfway through they were done, I think that's understandable. But 6 chapters into a Victorian novel doesn't give you even remotely a chance to come in with, like, you know? It was hard to note specifics, what with my eyes glazing over in a sheen of boredom. And then they talk about the scholarly introduction and say, but while I can understand this book's place in the tree of English lit, it's still boring as hell. These types of cozy small town dramas just don't appeal to me, and that applies as much to 1830s Deerbrook as to Jan Karan novels in the 21st century. And then they have a footnote that says that the person that wrote the introduction points to Martineau as a bridge between Austen and Gaskell and George Eliot. Never having read any Eliot or Gaskell's serious non-Gothic work, I can't fairly judge, but Jane Austen's makes me want to weep with the tediousness. Yeah, if you don't like Jane Austen, you won't like Deerbrook. And you probably won't like George Eliot either. And even if you liked Austen, you might not like George Eliot. If you don't like Deerbrook, you're not gonna like George Eliot. And then footnoting my footnote. I've since read Ruth, one of Gaskell's full-length novels, and given it 4 stars. It's not without flaws, but overall the philosophizing and sociological musings is much more palatable in its specifics as opposed to the endless in and out of an unmemorable cast of thousands. For what it's worth, Gaskell is also a vastly superior wordsmith compared to Martineau. Okay, that's fair. I don't think I'd compare this to Ruth. Maybe Cranford. And like maybe Mary Barton, North and South, but because Ruth is more fallen woman story. I don't know, it's just kind of a different genre. All right, so that is it for Deerbrook. Next we go to Wylding Hall by Elizabeth Hand. This was like a surprise one for me. I wasn't expecting to love this as much. It is a Gothic story set in the 70s about a band that goes to stay at this creepy house, Wylding Hall, and everything that happens there. In 2017, we have someone saying, I was about to gouge my eyes off. I think you mean out. After reading how beautiful and talented and uncanny and eerie Julian was for the 100th time. And that's all they say. I mean, we do hear a lot about that, about Julian. So, I guess fair. 2022. Thank goodness I got this one through the library because it was horrible. I think it has potential. However, this author left too much to the reader. Set up beautifully with the outing to the pub and the Wren photos. Should have put more into that storyline. Without any development, the Wren storyline isn't scary. It's more, what are you talking about? Could have been good if told differently and with more detail. I don't agree. I found this quite scary, especially there's a scene at the end that's like, it does leave a lot to the reader though. Like if you want explanations, this isn't the book for you. So I can see where some people would struggle with that. And there is a very long one from 2018. I hate not having bookstores. This seemed like the perfect read for me from the Amazon description. If I could have picked it up and skimmed it in a store, I never would have bought it. You can read samples on Amazon, and they've had that since like at least 2008. It would have been clear that 80 to 90% of the book was about a fictional band from British folk music revival in the early 70s. It says that in the description. I have no interest in the British folk music revival, especially because I wasn't even alive and had no idea it existed. I wasn't alive during a lot of stuff, and I can take interest in it despite the fact that I did not exist during it. That's such a weird critique. But also, if you read the summary, like the summary says, after the tragic and mysterious death of one of their founding members, the young musicians in a British acid folk band hole up at Wylding Hall, an ancient country house with its own dark secrets. There they record the classic album that will make their reputation. So you didn't read the description or the Amazon sample. This has nothing to do with not having bookstores. This has to do with you not using the resources available to you. I feel like I'm talking to one of my students right now. The book tried to portray the hedonism of the era, but it all seems so tame and boring now. Besides, why would I care about a fictional band? So do you not like fiction? No one here gets out alive was about a real band that was much more lively, interesting, and their story more frightening. The plot is supernatural, but we only have about 10% of the book that gets into that, and there is little to be frightened about. So, why would I care about a fictional band? Why would you care about a fictional character? Any like, point of fiction is that you have fictional people and fictional things and you care about them. What is this other book he's talking about? Okay, so this book that he's talking about, No One Here Gets Out Alive by Jerry Hopkins and Danny Sugarman, is a biography of Jim Morrison. The difference between fiction and non-fiction. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's not comparable. Like, yeah, of course, this one is about a fictional band. It's a novel, and that's about a real band. It's a biography. If this were Genesis recording an actual album like The Lamb Dies Down on Broadway at Headley Grange in Hampshire in the former poorhouse that had been owned by Aleister Crowley, which had drawn devotee Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin to record there earlier, where Steve Hackett recalls, if anything was a haunted house, that was. You'd hear extraordinary noises at night. It was almost impossible to sleep. And Peter Gabriel was convinced the house was haunted because of Page's forays in black magic. That would be a book worth reading, with a possible imaginative tie into real Lamb songs. Okay, again, fiction versus nonfiction. I mean, it definitely sounds like somebody should write a nonfiction book about that experience of recording the Genesis album. That sounds absolutely crazy. But if you don't want to read fiction, don't pick up fiction? Finally, the story is told by several narrators involved. It reads like you are listening to individuals recording their memories in a tape recorder. Yes, that's the point. This made for different interpretations of the events, also the point, but a boring read without action as a literary mode. This put me to sleep twice in 2 days. Once again, the promise of a book that you can't pick up and skim wasted some good hours of my life. You could skim it if you used the Amazon sample feature. But also, boy, don't talk to me about literary modes when you like can't even differentiate between fiction and nonfiction. Sorry, I'm a horrible snob sometimes. I was kind of worried that this might happen with this video, but like, again, totally fine that he didn't like it. His reasons for not liking it are, and I say him because he does have a man's name as his username. so I am not just assuming things. But yeah, okay. Okay, that's enough of Wylding Hall. Let's go to another classic, No Name by Wilkie Collins. So from 2017, we have someone saying, a very boring read. From 2024, we have did not finish, page 379, so 50%. A little more than 50. May come back to it, but you can really tell Collins was sick for a lot of the writing process. It's just badly written, in my honest opinion. He'll pick up plot threads only to completely abandon them and change the whole trajectory. It took 100 pages to get to the inciting incident, etc., etc. It's just bad. Cannot believe it's so well liked. I mean, 100 pages to get to the inciting incident is just Victorians. And the picking up plot threads only to completely abandon them, I cannot think of a time that actually happens in here. He does misdirect you a lot because it's a sensation novel. But okay. From 2014, I have to admit I'm biased. My enjoyment of a book is closely related to whether or not I can admire the main characters. I admire Nora. Her fortitude and patience are inspiring. However, the novel concentrates on Magdalene, and I was dismayed at her obsession to gain an end, whatever the cost. The end is beautiful with a redemptive theme, but it took so long to finally come. Okay, I've heard other people say that about this book. Yeah, you're not focusing on the most morally upright character here. That personally doesn't bother me. Again, my favorite book is Wuthering Heights, so they're all reprehensible. But I do know that is something that other people struggle with, so fair. From 2016, now I understand why this is the least known Wilkie Collins. What a dirge. None of the characters were in the least likable. Overcomplicated plot. This is not one of the least known Wilkie Collins. Girl, it has an Oxford edition. It is not one of the least known. Tell me you don't know Victorian literature without telling me you don't know Victorian literature. Anyway, overcomplicated plot. It's a Victorian sensation novel. Characters, no, a lot of them aren't likable. It's rather the point, but okay. And then from 2018, I didn't finish this book. I just didn't care about any of the characters after slogging through page after page after page of this book. I know the authors back then got paid by the word, but holy crap, this book never would end. The characters started out intriguing, but it was like Collins was going through China to get across the street. I need to put that one in my back pocket. That's a good one. I mean, how many times can you write the same damn scene and throw obstacles in the lead character's way just as filler? It's Victorians, they do that. Because of that, I grew to not care if she recovered the money due her family or not, and actively hated the whole damn book. Now I know why people will throw books across a room if they don't like them. And as a retired librarian, that is a major concession. If you need to fall asleep at night, this might be the book you need to get to that goal. I will say, even though I loved it and gave it 5 stars, there is a point where you're like, okay, Collins is just continuing on to get to the 3-volume mark, which was a super common problem with the writing of Victorian novels because the 3-volume was such a dominant form. So everyone was like, oh, I have to get it to 3 volumes. Like, I did feel like this book could have ended like 200 pages sooner, almost. Maybe more like 150. I loved it so much that I didn't care, but I can see why other people would have a problem with that. And then just one from 2021, did not finish, slow, in all caps. Okay. And you know what? I think I said I had 5 books. I actually had 6. I just didn't count the one that I don't have the physical copy of. Oops. And I did have a physical copy of this. I recently unhauled it and it is in a box and I didn't want to dig it out because that felt counterintuitive to what I was trying to do. This is Dear Committee Members by Julie Schumacher. So this is a satiric book told through letters of recommendation and emails written by a literature and creative writing professor, and he's done. He's frustrated, he's disillusioned, he's kind of a jerk. You find out a lot about his life and relationships through these letters. He's unprofessional as hell, yes, all that. So, from 2014, I spent about an hour with this book, and that was way more time than it deserved. And here I heard such good things about it. And me, an academic, too. Oh well. I won't put it in the category didn't finish because I did leaf through the whole thing. The book is made up of a series of letters from our hero, to a variety of recipients. He's a professor of English, he's recommending people for various jobs, fellowships, etc. The first 1 or 2 letters are rather entertaining, but I don't see how this could sustain interest. Ugh, I will spend no more time on it. You know, I found that it really did sustain my interest, though, just because through the letters we were learning so much about the guy's life, and it started slow. The first ones were not professional because they were still pretty sarcastic and snarky, but the longer you go, the more the letters start revealing stuff. But I can respect that this style is not for everybody at all. 2023, I really disliked this book. I found it to be unfunny, grating, and to be a complete bore. I suppose our anti-hero Professor Ficker is supposed to be a parody of the disillusioned professor of a middling liberal arts college, narcissistic and self-indulgent. Yes. But I found reading this book to be one of the most painful books I've ever read. Again, have you not read Moby Dick? And find nothing redeeming in having read it. I read it for an upcoming class I will be taking on the subject of teaching and memoir. Why? Teaching and memoir? Why are you teaching a novel for a memoir class? I mean, that's not the reviewer's fault. I question who your professor is, though. I would like to have a word with them. But it will be the book in which I hope to keep mum about, because I am assuming I'll be one of the few in the minority who thinks this book is a complete waste of time. I find it quite funny. As somebody who is in academia and who teaches and has to write letters of recommendation, I found it quite funny. From 2016, this book isn't targeted to me. I haven't worked in academia, and this is a book of letters of recommendation. The humor bored me to death here. I made it to 23% and had to quit. I just couldn't anymore. Everyone else seems to love it though, so don't pay too much attention to my review. I'm definitely the outlier on this one. That's interesting. I do think that you really need to be in academia or academia adjacent to fully enjoy this book. My husband, I read a few letters to him, and because he is so entrenched in my group of academic friends and he listens to us bitch all the time, he thought it was hysterical. But somebody who's nowhere near academia, I feel like might not even understand what is being satirized. And also how even though obviously it is super played up because it is a satire, it's really not that far off from the truth. So yeah, that is something. Yeah, the book isn't targeted at them. They're not the audience for it. So I can see why they wouldn't enjoy it in that case. All right, and so the final book we've got is my absolute favorite of the year, Red Comet, The Short Life and Blazing Art of Sylvia Plath by Heather Clark. This is a biography of Sylvia Plath, and I adored it. So, there's only 3 1-star reviews. As it should be, because this book is freaking amazing. So, from 2024, I wanted to like this book. I wanted to finish this book, but I could not. There is such a thing as too much detail, and this author is guilty of it 10 times over. This book could have been half as long and twice as impactful, but is instead filled with minutia that bogs down any kind of meaning or joy. I don't know what kind of joy you're expecting in a biography of Sylvia Plath, but what? I don't agree that there's such a thing as too much detail when it comes to biography. Like, I mean, maybe for somebody that's not super into the person, like, I wouldn't recommend this to somebody that only had a passing interest in Sylvia Plath. It's over 1,000 pages. But for somebody that was interested in this, or somebody that was working on Plath academically, that kind of detail is so important. So, okay, I still don't know what kind of joy you're talking about, but... From 2021, did not finish. This is a very well-written, detailed, and thorough book about Sylvia Plath. I wish I was enough of a fan to finish this, but I'm not, and I can't bring myself to power through this one. Yeah, see, this person recognizes they're not enough of a fan of Sylvia Plath to read over 1,000 pages about Sylvia Plath. And I get that. I would think that you would already know that about yourself before picking it up, but okay. And then this one pisses me off. This one pisses me off. So this is from 2020, and it is written as a poem. Sylvia Plath, black and white snapshot days. Comes the night snatching behind you. Goodbye, cruel suicide world. Whirl of gaseous fumes. The oven loves her and loves her. Dreamy blank stare girl. Hashtag poem. This is written by a man. I know because he has his name. And again, I'm not naming the guilty, so I will not say it. This is so dismissive of Plath as an artist, as a person who went through depression and ultimately committed suicide. Like, this is just... Like, shut up. Shut up. You know, I think I've done a very good job not getting mad. Because, like, again, I don't care if you don't like a book, but to be so dismissive of, first of all, somebody's art of poetry, and to just try to make her look like some sad Tumblr girl. I say as I am a sad Tumblr girl. Like, and to kind of mock her suicide like that. Screw you, dude. Screw you. You suck. I hate you. I give you a 1-star review, and you're not a good poet. So there. Okay, I've got to put this down now. This is so heavy. So that is me reacting to 1-star review of my 5-star books from 2024. And now my hand hurts from holding up that book. Ow. So again, like, if you're like, oh God, one of those was my review, no offense meant. None at all, except to that last guy. Full offense meant. Full offense meant. You're a dick. But everyone else, no offense meant. If you didn't like these books either, no offense meant. I just thought it would be fun to kind of react to them and see what did people really not like. And like, can I see where they're coming from? Like with the length of Red Comet and the detail, like I can get that. Whereas the person that was like, there's no world building in the Goblin Emperor, I'm like, what? Huh? So yeah, it's just for fun. It's not that serious, other than that one guy. So let me know down in the comments below, have you read any of these? What did you think? Were they 5-star reads for you? Were they 1-star reads for you? Why or why not? Do you have a book that you love that other people are like always giving 1 star, like with Wuthering Heights and me? How do you feel about that? Do you think it's appropriate to rate something 1 star if you DNF'd it 6 chapters, aka 50 pages into a 500-page book? I don't know. I actually am really curious to hear what other people think about that. So let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.